So, in this final video, we will have the top 3 of his reasons or his issues that the Bible presents for a young earth theory or belief. So, without further ado, let us get into it.
Number 3. Genesis 1:28. As noted before, young earth believers say before the fall, the earth was blissful and perfect, with no death or suffering. But Genesis 1:28 suggests the opposite was true. Humanity is told to subdue the earth and have dominion over all animals. In Hebrew, these words are extremely harsh. The first word is used of war conquest and enslavement. The second word refers to ruling harshly over someone, or oppression. So God is telling humans to make a warlike conquest on the earth because it needs subdued, implying the earth wasn't perfect, and humanity was elected to transform the earth into a better place. But to do that meant tackling the harsh environments forcefully. The scholar Joshua John Van Eat notes the use of this second word for ruling over the animals seems to suggest humans had the right to use animals for any purpose, like food and clothing, implying they already had the right to kill and eat animals. But this means the command from God implies the earth was not a perfect, blissful creation. Instead, this verse implies the earth was chaotic and needed order brought to it. Also, humans seem to be given the right to kill animals, implying death was already in existence. Number 2, Bara.
Let's pause that there again. Again, we talk about implications. Or this could mean this could mean that. It implies it because they want it to imply it, quite honestly. God gave man dominion over the earth, over the animals, over the plants. In the Garden of Eden, there was no death. Everything was perfect. But man still had the dominion. He was still over the animals and plants. He could use them how he saw fit. Not to abuse or mistreat them, but, but more importantly, this is God giving a command for the future, because he knew what was happening. See, to say that the fall of Adam was not a surprise to God, it was part of the plan. And again, this is a part where the LDS very disagree with the rest of Christianity. And that we believe that the fall was necessary. It was part of the plan. God was prepared for it. Because you can't frustrate God. God's plans will always happen. Therefore, if it did happen, it had to have been the intention of God that it did. So God tells Adam and Eve, he gives them 2 commands. He actually gives them 2 commands: to replenish the earth, multiply and replenish the earth, and not eat the tree, not eat the forbidden fruit. He's giving them dominion. He's not commanding them to take dominion. He is giving them dominion. He is turning over his authority over the earth to man. Or what we call giving them the stewardship of the earth. That's not a commandment. That's just him handing over that stewardship. There are many other commandments that go along with us to explain to us how we are to handle that stewardship. But the fact that we have that stewardship is not a commandment, it is simply a given. It's simply a given stewardship to us. Now the last point they make, that death already existed before the fall, no, it didn't. Again, this is where we get the trouble of selectively quoting without taking the Bible in its totality. Because it states right here, Paul, in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, he gives his wonderful discourse on the resurrection. Let's see, where is it? Right here, verse 21. For since by man came death, by man came also the resurrection of the dead. For as in Adam all die, even so in Christ shall all be made alive. So no, there was no death before the fall of Adam. The resurrection of Christ was done specifically to correct or redeem all life from the physical death that was caused by the fall of Adam. So if you want to take these passages by themselves, then yes, you can kind of twist them. I wouldn't even say necessarily twist them. You can say there is an implication there, but only if you take them by themselves. When you take them in the whole totality of the Bible, it can't mean that. The Bible does not teach that. And only by being selective in your quoting can you force the Bible to have that meaning. But again, and I will repeat this on many of these things, what does it have to do with how old the earth is? So even if things weren't made perfect, even if the world was harsh and they had to go out and subdue it, even if everything they said is true, what makes it, what necessitates that it had to have existed for millions of years? Why couldn't God just create it 6,000 years ago, approximately, in the state that it's in? So once again, there's no real problem here. I mean, they are definitely wrong in what they're saying, but what they're saying doesn't create a problem. Again.
Number 2, bara. Number 2 is not so much a passage, but the use of a Hebrew word. Many Young Earth creationists believe this word refers to God creating out of nothing, and it is used frequently throughout Genesis 1. But looking at how the word is used outside of Genesis 1 implies bara doesn't necessarily mean creation out of nothing, and might not even refer to material creation at all. John Walton has done a full semantic analysis on the word, and he points out the word never necessarily means creation out of nothing, and there are several times it cannot mean that. In Psalm 51, the author uses bara to ask God to make a new clean heart within him. This obviously doesn't refer to the creation of a new material heart out of nothing. In Isaiah 65, it refers to electing Jerusalem to be a place of joy. In Isaiah 43, it refers to creating the nation of Israel, which came about over time and through natural processes. In Ezekiel 21, it refers to making a sign. It is even used to refer to David not eating food. There are times it could refer to material creation out of nothing, but it never necessarily does, and there are clear examples where bara cannot refer to material creation. So there is no reason to assume that that is the meaning in Genesis 1, especially given the previous problems that we have gone over. Kenneth Matthews notes bara more likely refers to bringing about activity, rather than material manufacturing, implying Genesis 1 is not about material creation. Before we get to number 1, remember to subscribe.
Okay. A couple of notes here. First of all, you'll note the frequent and constant repetition of it. It doesn't necessarily mean this. It might mean this. It doesn't have to mean that. But he never actually points to any indication why it can't mean this. And so once again, he fails to actually establish a problem. So, and he says at the end there's no reason for us to accept that it does mean this, but there's no reason to accept that well, at least he doesn't give us a reason to accept that it doesn't. He just says that because we don't have to think it does, then we should think it doesn't. Again, there's no logic in that. Now, on this particular point, I actually agree with him. I know the word, I know its use, and it is actually a word used by Joseph Smith in some of his discourses to refute the claim of creation of nothing, out of nothing, or what's called creation ex nihilo. And if you're going to use it, then I like what Joseph Smith's word, if it always means an organizing force, not a creation, but an organizing of previously had material in every place else, then shouldn't we also think that it is in this just more or less asking, why do we believe, or why does anybody believe in creation out of nothing? Because of this. But I will actually cut that out. Never mind. But yeah, so I actually agree. But I actually agree with him on this. The LDS Church does not teach a creation out of nothing. We believe, and it is stated in our scriptures, not directly in the Bible, but actually we believe it is directly in the Bible because of this word. But it is also stated in other places that God took material or matter or element, I believe was the term in the scriptures. I uses all those terms really, matter, material, element. But he took the materials that already existed and used them to create the earth. He didn't create out of nothing. There was already material. This earth is not his first creation, nor will it be his last. He has created worlds without end, as the scriptures say. Many before, and there will be many after. And each time he takes material that already exists and uses it to build an earth. And we agree with that. But again, on a final note, what does that have to do with the age of the earth? Just because God is not creating out of nothing does not mean that he didn't build the earth 6,000 years ago. Or at least that the fall didn't happen 6,000 years ago. So again, there's no, whether you believe, he gives no clear reasoning on why you shouldn't believe in creation out of nothing. And he gives no real connection between this and the age of the earth. There's nothing there. He's just saying, if he didn't create it out of nothing, then it had to have been millions of years old. Then it had to have been created millions of years ago. It makes no sense. There's no logic to that. And we're seeing this repeated frequently. Almost no point that he makes here actually has a bearing on the age of the earth. The first one, it had a minor, but most of his points don't actually produce any problems for one who believes in a young earth. Anyways, we're going to pause again. Excuse me. We're going to pause again, but there is a kind of advertisement here that I will skip over before I do my last response to his number one point.
And now finally, number 1, Genesis 1, verse 1. This may come as a shock to you, but the very first verse of the Bible can create difficulties for young earth models. The reason is, over the past few decades, scholars have noted the first verse lacks a definite article in Hebrew, so the way we translate it may not be accurate. Instead, scholars like John Salhammer and Robert Homestead have argued it would make more sense to translate it as, when God began to create the heavens and the earth. What this would mean is verse 1 is no longer a complete sentence, but what we would call a dependent clause in an incomplete sentence.
Okay, just a note here first. Again, his point is that it could mean this, that this is possibly mistranslated, and if it is mistranslated, then it should say this, but what if it's not mistranslated? Did we ever consider that? And while some scholars may say it would make more sense, as he says, this one scholar says it would make more sense to translate it this way, what do other scholars say? Maybe we do have it translated correctly. But let's finish the part.
So this would mean verse 1 is dependent on the following clause, which is in verse 2. So Genesis is really saying, when God began to bara the heavens and the earth was formless and void. In other words, when God started baraing the heavens and the earth, it was already there as formless and void. So many scholars note this implies Genesis 1 is not about bringing the universe and the earth into existence for the first time, but is about God transforming the earth from a chaotic state into an ordered state. If the Hebraic...
Okay. On this point, I agree with you. This is actually exactly what Joseph Smith has taught. This is exactly what the LDS scriptures have taught. This is what we have believed from the beginning, that God took material that was in a chaotic state and formed it, built it, created the earth from it. So in the LDS Church, when we say the earth is only 6,000 years old, or at least we say the mortal existence of the earth is only 6,000 years, because that's the fall of Adam to the modern day, approximately 6,000 years. We do admit that we don't know how long he was in the garden, how long Adam and Eve were in the garden, nor do we really know how long the creation took. We just know it took 6 creative periods, or it was done in 6 phases. So that, we have some wiggle room in, because we're willing to admit that. But beyond that, all of this only applies to this earth. It doesn't apply to the universe, it applies to this earth. I personally would also extend that to be applying to this solar system. I might even apply to the galaxy, but that I think is going a little too far. I think this solar system was created all at the same time. But we know the earth at least was created then. We don't know how long they were in the garden, but after the fall of Adam, we've had 6,000 years of mortal life. But we don't believe that the universe was created out of nothing, nor do we believe that it was brought into existence at the same time as the earth. There was already stuff in existence. We believed in, as I said in the previous one, worlds without number. God created many worlds before this, and he will create many worlds after this, and he will always create them out of pre-existing material. So on this point, he's right. The earth, that actually is, matter of fact, Joseph Smith stated specifically that is what the opening passage of Genesis means, that God took chaotic matter and formed it into the earth. I'm actually kind of, it's fun to see modern scholars begin to agree with the prophet who said this, almost 200 years ago now. But again, what does that have to do with the age of the earth itself? Now, if you're talking about the age of the universe, now you have a little bit of a problem. I agree with you there. But there's no problem for the age of the earth. And see, this is where, as I said in the previous one, this is where the LDS doctrine fixes problems. Because there is a difficulty here, or if you believe that all existence was brought into being out of nothing. Now we have an issue. It is just a small issue, but it is an issue. Now, it is perfectly plausible to say that when God created the earth, or when God started to create the earth, when he first created matter, it was in a formless, chaotic state. It didn't exist before that. It's just God first spoke it into existence. It was formless and void. There's really not much problem with that. There's only a minor issue with this one. And that issue is completely erased when we accept that this was not the first creation of God, and it will not be the last. But let us finish the video.
Form of verse 1 and 2 implies the earth was already there existing before the creation week. Then the text supports an extended period of time prior to this and is not actually stating the absolute beginning point of our universe. Now I know some of these points might come as a shock to you, but we are not arguing this creates problems for the biblical worldview, just for young earth models that claim to be based on biblical texts. Given all of these points, the biblical scriptures don't seem to support many of the claims of young earth creationists. Luckily on this channel, we have a 50...
Okay, the rest was just another advertisement, so as I pointed out, none of his points actually create a issue for those who believe in a young earth. Not one. And when we take the expanded view as shown in the doctrine of the LDS Church, it's even less of an issue. Any issue that might have existed is erased completely. So no, the Bible does not teach that the earth is ancient, at least not its mortal existence. And to get it to do that, he has done exactly what the young earth believers, as he wants, the people who believe in the young earth, he's done exactly what they say, and exactly what I have said. He has changed, or he has that's the word he used. He has misconstrued what the scriptures say in order to make it fit. And yet, even in his explanation, it is always implied, or not necessarily this, or we could indicate this. We don't have to believe that. It's all subjective reasoning with no definite conclusions, really. It's just him saying he doesn't believe in a young earth. This is why, but not really presenting anything that proves this point in any way, except that it's what he wants to believe. Anyways, I just wanted to share that and share my responses to it. So, tune in for my next video, which will be my next response to the CES letter. Thank you.